Ladies and gentlemen, Toastmasters and guests of Advanced EIY Toastmasters, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Haider, and I am really honored to be back here at Advanced EIY Toastmasters to give another sharing, this time on how to tell captivating stories. How to tell captivating stories. Now, storytelling has always been one of the big demands for new Toastmasters, because as speakers, we want to know how can we tell captivating stories that get people engaged, enraptured, enchanted with our words. How do we tell stories that move and inspire people, that get an emotional reaction out of people, that get people to look away from their phones and look into their eyes? Right? How do we tell captivating stories? Now, if you've been a speaker for a while, you may have heard of this particular phrase. Facts tell, stories sell. Facts tell, stories sell. In fact, you may not be a professional public speaker. Maybe you don't have to give presentations every day. Maybe you just are at a situation at work where you are in a position of leadership and you want to motivate the people around you, or maybe you are doing sales. But the fact is, everyone loves stories. When we were kids, the way we learned was through stories. We didn't care about facts, because when we were kids, that portion of our brain, the logical side of our brain, has not developed yet. So that's where your mom or your dad will say, clean your room. And you will say, no, I'd rather play. Right? Because they don't, as kids, we don't see the reasoning behind. But if your parents tell you stories, that gets you listening. And then you get hooked. And in fact, some kids, they cannot go to sleep without listening to a good bedtime story. Now the good news is, as adults, we are very much the same way. We are still kids at heart, and we love listening to stories. So if you are able to build your repertoire as a speaker and tell fantastic stories, you can be a masterclass speaker. If you've watched every single World Championship speech at the highest level of Toastmasters, every single one of them told a story. So how can you create a masterful story? Today, my aim is to share with you two structures whereby you can use to craft story. First, a simple structure, and the next one is a more advanced structure if you want to really upgrade your skills in storytelling. And after I share with you these two structures, I'm going to tell you 3 tips on how you can tell captivating stories. Anyone can tell a story, but how do you tell a captivating story? Right? That's the next level. So I hope that with this presentation, all of you strive to be really magnificent storytellers in your speaking journey. Are we ready?
Yes.
Right. So just to give you a little bit of background for myself, I'm 27 years old. I've been in the training and coaching line since I was 18. And I've done a lot of public seminars, private coaching. I've trained TEDx speakers. I've also done a lot of workshops and seminars for international students, university students, Toastmasters workshops, such as this one. And I've also given a lot of corporate training. Now, I didn't start off like this. I didn't start off wearing a red blazer everywhere I go. I didn't start off having this kind of way where I speak. In fact, when I was 15 years old, I had a lot of social anxiety. I couldn't speak to my teachers, I couldn't speak to my friends. I could speak to them, but it would bring me a lot of difficulty. I could be sitting next to you right here in class, and I would feel anxiety just to ask you to borrow a pen. And that would make me nervous. A teacher would ask a question, and I would be the last person to raise my hand because of that crippling social anxiety. But there was one blessing that I had. And that blessing was, I love to write. Oh my God, I love to write. Day and night I would write. If you remember back in the early 2000s, or rather the mid 2000s, they had this thing called Blogspot, where a lot of people had blogs at the moment, and I was one of them. So I used to write blog articles day and night. I love to write, and I wrote day and night in my journal what happened, but I never shared this with anyone. once upon a time, my English teacher, her name was Mrs. Cheong. She had an essay writing contest that she had for the entire school. So I had nothing to lose. Every one of us were forced to participate in this contest. So all of us wrote our own essays. Turns out, I won the contest. And I thought to myself, oh my god, yes! Finally I can make something out of myself. Finally I can prove to all the boys who never ask me out for football, to all the girls who ignore me in school, I can finally prove to them that I'm worth something. So Mrs. Chong came up to me. She said, Haider, well done. Well done. I'm so proud of you. I know that you have a lot of social anxiety, but you did really well, and I'm proud of you for winning the contest. Now, I have a challenge for you. And I said, what's the challenge? She said, now, you have to give this essay as a speech to the entire school during morning assembly. And I looked at her with a deadpan face. And I said, okay. So if you were me, how would you feel? You've never given a single presentation in your life, now you have to speak to 3,000 people. So this is what I did. I was so serious about doing it right that I would practice my speech for 6 months. How long? 6 months. 6 months I would practice the exact same speech. I would go to my room, I would look in the mirror, and I would just rehearse my speech over and over and over again. Not in front of anyone, in front of myself. And I would practice for 6 months until the day I had to give a speech. Now that day, I remember it as if it was yesterday. The day I had to give the speech, this is a real-life reenactment of what happened. They called my name, and I held the script in my hand. And as I walked to the podium, which felt like miles away, in front of all the people, I walked like this. And I told myself, Adam, just do it. You got nothing to lose. This is your time to shine, I told myself. So I did not look at any single person in the audience. But when I looked down on my script, I could see beads of sweat. My friends would tell me later that they could see my legs behind the podium because it was like this. I was secretly trying to fly. So then, I looked down on my speech, I looked up, I looked down again, and I started my speech. And I started first line, second line, third line, first paragraph, second paragraph. And I was like, oh, I think I'm doing well. 6 months of practice and I'm really getting it right. I'm finally making something out of myself. And as I read and read and read, but suddenly, I started to hear giggling coming from the audience. Giggling. Why were these people laughing? And as I read on and on, the laughter got louder and louder and louder until I felt there was something wrong with the way I was giving my speech. As I ended the speech, and everyone clapped for me, I stepped down. I looked at my watch, and I realized my speech was supposed to be 5 minutes. I gave it in 1 minute. Ladies and gentlemen, I had given my speech so quickly that my friends thought it was a total joke. And as my head hung low, I stepped back to my class. Everyone looked at me now. My bullies looked at me now. my crush that I really liked and I loved her with all my heart, now she totally knows me for who I am. Exactly as I wanted, right? So I walked back to my class. And that night, I looked at myself in the mirror once more. And I told myself, you know what? I am never gonna put myself in this situation ever again. So, this was what happened. After I graduated from high school, that happened in high school. After I graduated in high school, I went to college. And I told myself, I wanted to start fresh. I wanted to start anew. So I would do every single thing that the previous hider would never do. So I took up one thing that really changed my life. I took up martial arts. I learned to toughen myself up. I learned how to fight. Now in martial arts, I was beaten, battered, and bruised. But I was never broken. And that's where I started to build my confidence. I won bronze medalist in my first year. In my second year, I decided to try something else. I took drama, where I learned to and I did all those facial expressions that the previous hider would never even imagine. And I started to build even more confidence by playing the lead role in my school play. And as I went on to year 3, I stopped martial arts and drama. Every single time I walk by the hallway in my college, there's always this big banner that says, "Join Toastmasters." And I would walk past this banner and I'd be like, what the heck is Toastmasters? Is it a place where you make toast, like bread? Must be a breakfast club. And I look at it, ignore it. Then the next day I would walk past and see the banner again. I'm like, Toastmasters? What toasting? You mean toasting like toast? I don't drink alcohol. I don't belong there. So I walk past again. And I would totally ignore Toastmasters all the way until I was 21. When I finally, by chance, I came into training as a career. And in training, I realized I still couldn't speak. But now, I was different. My confidence was there. So I remembered Toastmasters, and someone said Toastmasters was actually about public speaking. So I Googled Toastmasters, and at 21 years old, I stepped into my very first chapter meeting. And I remember the day of my first icebreaker. When the Toastmaster of the evening asked me, and they introduced me, let's welcome Haider Taufik. I stood up, opened my script, and I walked to the front. And I read out my icebreaker. This time as a different person. By the time I was done, I won the best speaker ribbon for that night. Years later, I would actually return back to my high school because the English teacher that asked me to give the essay as a speech, she called me up. She had been following my profile on social media, and she started to see that I was doing a lot of youth motivational talks. So she was like, oh, look at where this boy is now. Let's give him a call. She called me and she said, Haider, we are doing a career fair and we see that you have done a lot of success as your career. We're really proud to have you to come back and maybe share a little bit about what was your experience. And I was like, I looked at her. Okay. So I remember a week later, I stepped back into my high school and I spoke to all the graduating classes. I stood at the exact podium where I made that first speech. And I told them this was the place that I gave my first speech. Today, I'm proud to be sharing with all of you my story. Thank you very much. So what I'm about to do now is that I'm going to share with you what I did, right? How I applied this particular story to a story structure. So I'm going to share with you two different structures. The first one is a simple structure. Second is a more complex structure. In fact, both of it is quite simple. But if you know how to craft a good speech, you can simply use you can use the structure to help you organize your speech. Now, the first simple structure is something that you can use to come up with a story in less than 5 minutes. In less than 5 minutes. Do you want to know how you can come up with a story in less than 5 minutes? Okay. So very simple. The story structure is called STOR story. Okay, remember fact tell, story sell. If you don't have a story before you go into the interview or the presentation, you can use this structure to come up with a quick one so that you can engage your audience from the start. And how do you do it? I'm going to share what it stands for, alright? S stands for situation. Situation. Situation is where the main character starts. What was the situation like? Okay, what was the status quo? Where did they start? And then, a story only is a story when something happens to the person. Okay, that flips the person's situation. Now you can talk about the thoughts and feelings. How did the character think? What were the feelings they felt when they went through what they went through? Okay, thoughts and feelings. After thoughts and feelings, you can talk about the observations and actions. What did the character do? Okay, this is essential. What did the character do in the story? Alright? Now, by the end of the story, there has to be some sort of conclusion or a result. So the story has to end somewhere. Okay? That's called the result. Alright? Now, finally, what do you think is the why? You. What do you think is the why? Right? Your why stands for your learning. Your learning. Or if you're used to stories, sometimes we call it the moral of the story. What did you learn at the end of the day after going through all that what you learned? Okay? So if I were to apply my story, the one that I just gave to all of you, right? The situation was, at 15 years old, I had a lot of social anxiety. Couldn't speak to anyone. If I want to ask for eraser, it's like I cannot, right? So this is all the situation. Okay, then something happened. Something happened. My teacher, Mrs. Chong, she asked me to give that essay as a speech to the entire school. That was it. And how I felt, like, okay, I was determined to succeed. Alright, so what happened? I practiced for how many months? 6 months. Alright, I practiced for 6 months. That was the observation that the character did. Okay, then after that I went out. Alright, I went out, it was a total failure. And how did I feel? Right? Thoughts and feelings once more. Okay, I said that I would never put myself in that situation ever again. Alright, so but what happened was, the result was, I ended up striving to improve my confidence. So I took up martial arts, I took up this, and all in all, the result was that I became a good speaker. So I started out as a weak speaker, and I ended up as a better speaker. So you have a before and after. And after you have the after, you want to share about what did you learn? What did you learn? Right? So I learned that if you commit to something and stick to it, no matter the obstacles, you still can succeed. And you can make things happen for you. Alright, is this a simple one that you can use?
Yes.
Alright, good. So finally, let's talk about advanced story structure. How many of you have heard of the hero's journey? Okay, so if you watch any movie, if you watch any great movie, Lord of the Rings, or you watch Star Wars, or any Harry Potter, right? You can actually apply the hero's journey structure to all of these movies. All great movies, they tend to have this story structure. Even the olden day stories, classical stories like Odysseus, and all the Shakespearean stories, you can also apply the story structure. You realize that the great adventures tend to have a certain circular path. Now, what does this story structure look like? It looks like something like this. Okay. Now, you can take a photo of my slide. However, if you want, I can send you the slides after this. Would you like that? Yeah. Alright, that'd be good. Okay, so this is a very simple hero's journey. It's a very cartoonish one. In fact, you can go to Google and just type hero's journey. If you want to read a book on this, where it came about, it's by this person called Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell. He was the one who wrote the hero's journey. So, in the hero's journey, the hero starts at the top, say at 12. If this was a clock, right? It starts at 12 o'clock. And then he goes on a call to adventure. He meets a mentor, and then he crosses the threshold. So this is the part where he goes on his adventure. Alright, then along the way there's a lot of trials and failures, he grows new skills, and then suddenly there's a big obstacle that happens to him. Something that changes. Right? He builds himself up, suddenly crashes down. Right? And now he's at the lowest point of the story. Rock bottom, at 6 o'clock. So the story can end there, and it will be a very tragic story. But a story is inspirational when you can show that the character goes through a certain transformation. So if the character decides that he makes a revelation, that means he learned his lesson now. And with his lesson, he decides to apply it and builds into something else. He goes through more changes, and finally he returns as a changed person. Okay, back to start. So, this is called the hero's journey, and we tend to love stories where the character goes through some form of transformation. Right? We love stories that has to do with transformation. So, if you look at all the championship stories, analyze them. Right? All of them go through some transformation. Okay? So, if let's say we were to apply my story to this, you can also do that. So I start off here, I was a socially awkward kid. I could be a socially awkward kid forever in my life and I don't change. But then, there won't be no story. So I start there and I meet a mentor. So this mentor is usually a character in the story that triggers the main character to go on an adventure. So mine was my teacher. She gave me a challenge. She said, give your essay as a speech. And I took up the challenge. So that's when I crossed the threshold. I decided to do something different now. And when I did something different, I practiced for 6 months, I developed new skills. What happened? I made a complete mess out of myself. But then the revelation was, this is not the end. So I started to build more confidence for myself. And in fact, I returned back to the exact same place where I gave the speech, this time as a different person. Alright, does it make sense? Okay, so that circular structure is very satisfying for the viewer or for the audience. Because we all love things that come full circle. We want closure in our lives. Alright? So, 3 tips to tell captivating stories, 3 quick tips. The first one is show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. I could very well say, when I carried my paper to the podium, I was feeling very nervous. There's not a lot of impact. But when I did it and I shake it, I'm showing it to you. So I don't have to say I'm nervous, you know exactly what I mean. Okay? Showing is how you captivate audience. When you tell, they start to turn on. Remember, facts tell, stories sell. Very good. Okay? And take your time to build suspense. Now in Toastmasters, usually we have 5 to 7 minutes. So that's where you want to structure your story to end, make sure it ends around 7 minutes, so you can spend the last 30 seconds to talk about your learning at the end. That's usually for my guide. Alright, so take your time to build suspense and take your audience on a ride. Make it fun. And finally, choose a story with a theme that your audience can relate to. Coming into this workshop, I knew that I'm going to be speaking to Toastmasters, people who want to work on their public speaking skills. So I added Toastmasters into my story, something that all of us can relate to. Alright? Even my journey was about how I became confident. Now all of us want to be confident, that's why we're here. Right? So it's really powerful if the audience can see themselves in your shoes. And that's where your story can become very captivating. Does it make sense? Alright, very good. Okay, so if you're interested in the slides, I would like to have your emails. So very simple, you can go to this particular link or scan this QR code. I want you to take your phones out. Alright, scan this QR code, and I will not only send you the slides, but I'll also send you this free ebook that I wrote. Okay, on charisma. Alright, so with that, thanks for letting me come full circle in my speech here today. It's really a pleasure to be here speaking to advanced EIY Toastmasters. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your kind attention. Back to you.